Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Happy Tuesday. It's August 25th. Thank you so much for joining our community conversations with leaders. I am so excited about this talk today. I am Dr. Selma Bartholomew, president and owner of Legacy Pathways, partner with Legacy. And you are in for a powerhouse and awesome and transformative conversation today as we talk about raising sons and investing in a fatherhood. So if we're just joining us, you get a moment to grab your popcorn, you get a moment to call a friend and let them know to join us. We are about ready to start our community conversations. I have a dynamic panel with us today to get to the heart of our community and the things we need to do. Before we get started, I got to remind you, you got to show Dr. B and the Legacy team some love. You got to like and subscribe the channel. And just so you know, I'm always learning. So I've discovered with YouTube, even though I'm a mathematician, that it's all about their algorithm. So you might be saying, Dr. B is always telling me to hit the like button and the subscribe button. I didn't make the rules. I'm just following it. So the whole YouTube community is you've got to hit, you've got to like and subscribe. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm Dr. Selma Bartholomew. I'm Dr. B. It's an honor. I'm going to get started today. Our conversation today is on raising sons and investing in fatherhood. We have a dynamic panel, a diverse panel representing different places. We have Harlem, we've got Jersey, and we've got your Philadelphia crew. So if you're in Philadelphia, call your friends, let them know that we're here and we're going in very strong as we engage in this conversation. Let me give you a context for the webinars. If you've not had a chance to connect with us before, welcome. Our community conversations is about creating an authentic space and a space for voice for leaders who are doing the work, for community people who are doing the work and who have been engaged in this work. So today we're here for really thinking about ways in which we confront structural racism. We want to openly address the challenges facing our boys, our young men of color, and our fathers. And I did this webinar at this time because I know that we are in a pandemic and everyone is at home. And we've been having some conversations with our principals. We did a task force. And I said to them, you know, part of what I'm concerned with in the next few months is, are we going to be now faced with high teen pregnancy? Are we going to be faced with issues of health with our young people? Because they're home. And let's be honest, hey, if you don't remember what it was being a teenager, may or may not be supervised, I'm keeping it real. That's why it's right. This is legacy. So we want to have some honest conversations today. We also want to talk about what does it mean to step up, to shoulder up, to show up, and to stand in the gap for our young men and fathers. And most importantly, we want to talk about solutions and culturally responsive solutions. So I'm excited to have this discussion with us. I want to start off by introducing, we have 3 panel members. I think I just lost Principal Stovall, but we have a tech team in the back. I'm pretty sure he'll jump back on. Everybody's on Zoom, so we thank you for your patience. Once again, before we get started, what are you gonna do? Show Dr. B the love, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, so we can connect with you, all right? So I'm gonna start with Principal Moody. What an honor and a pleasure to have you here today. We have Director Archie Leacock from the Institute of African American Youth, and we have Principal Stovall, Principal of New Design Middle School. How I do the webinars is I always ask the panel members to introduce themselves, and I ask them a special question. So I'm gonna start with Principal Moody. I'm gonna ask you to introduce yourself to the audience. Tell us about your school, because I was so excited when you shared some of your story with me. And I want you to tell me about one person in your life who shouldered up for you. And what is it that that person did that was so concrete that you can remember and that they are your heroes? So Principal Moody, welcome and thank you for joining our community conversations.
Well, Dr. B, thank you very much for having me and giving me this invite. And I think it's very apropos that you even asked that question to start this off. As my name is Zatiti Moody, I am the principal of the Alonzo Tambua Moody Academy, formerly known as the Great Falls Academy. It is an alternative high school for disaffected youth, some of which who are adjudicated youth, means they were convicted of some juvenile crimes. Others have been put out of their traditional high schools and sent to our school. So we run a pretty tough high school, but this high school was partly founded by my father, who is Alonzo Moody, and it's named after my father. So when you ask the question, who has had an impact on my life? I have to be honest and say there are many people who have had an impact in our community of Paterson who helped to raise me. And my father ensured that he had me around individuals that he believed in and he trusted, who were about the business of community. And they helped to raise me. So the person that I would name is my father, but I can't just say my father. It's my mother and father who raised me. When I was about 2 or 4 years old, they moved into a group home for abused, abandoned, and neglected youth. So they were the foster parents for 8 boys, including my brothers and I, which was altogether 11 boys they raised in a group home. And they raised us in that group home until I was in ninth grade in high school. So over the years, I lived with over 200 different young men from our community who were abused, abandoned, neglected from the city of Paterson. And we were raised as brothers. So that experience in itself helped to mold me to understand what my role is in the community and what my obligation in life was. He taught me a purpose, and I was always taught that my purpose in life was to create a world better than the one that I was born into. So every day you have to be better to do something to help create the legacy. And we helped to ensure that my father's legacy in a community of over 40 years of dedicating his life and service to the community will be a staple in the community and will stand for years to come. So I'm very proud of that. And that's where I am now. I formerly was the principal of Eastside High School. For any of you who ever watched the movie Lean on Me, I went to that high school, graduated from that high school, went on to college, graduated from the University of Pittsburgh, came back and worked as a school social worker, later becoming the school social worker at the school I currently work in now, and later became a principal and ultimately was assigned to Eastside High School, the school that I went to school after the famous principal Joe Clark, and I actually became one of the principals of that high school as well.
Wow,
Very
talk about
impressive.
legacy. Stepping up, showing up, shouldering up. Thank you so much, Principal Moody. It's an honor and it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to learn from you today and to benefit from your years of experience in these different roles, always stepping up. For those who are just joining us, welcome to Community Conversations with Dr. B and Legacy. I am also honored to have Director Archie Leacock, also this extensive career working on behalf of community and service and our young men and young women in Philadelphia. I'm going to ask Director Leacock if you can introduce yourself, your organization, and tell our audience who is the person that you remember who have shouldered up for you, and what is it that they did that was so very concrete. Director Leacock?
Well, Dr. B, this is a great opportunity for this invite and to talk about it. It's very rare that I talk about myself because the word is so impactful and the work that we do is so critical that we constantly working with parents, constantly working with young people and helping them realize their potential, the very potential that I had my own mother help me with. So I'm Archie Leacock. Came to the United States when I was 16 years old, I think in 1972. And immediately recognized getting off the plane there was a difference between white and blacks. Why are we standing on this side? Why are we standing on that side? My mother whispered to me, well, because, this is the way it is. This is the way it is. So I came to America at 16, went to Overbrook School for the Blind. For your audience, I am totally blind, and I love it. Anyone wants to be blind, I will help you. No embarrassment there. It's great news. And went to Overbrook, finished up my high school, went to Temple University, got an undergraduate degree, went up to the Midwest, Indiana University, Hoosier, got a master's degree, came back to Temple, got another master's, and finished up a PhD in political science in 1998. So I've really gone through the length of education, and all of it simply $6,000 compared to the tuition and the loans that our young people get stifled with. I paid $6,000 for the entire thing, and that was just when student loans were coming into being. That's how I ended up with the $6,000. So, but me, growing up in Trinidad in the Caribbean, I went blind. It was a hereditary family thing, so I had two relatives who were already blind from the same thing. So I had some practice with it or some reality with it. So when I went blind, my whole family jumped in making it work for me, particularly my mother. I have to tell you, my mother dropped everything. She taught me everything over, how to wash dishes, how to walk and sweep, taking off my shoes, and how to make phone calls, how to wipe my behind. I mean, this woman literally taught me everything. And when it was time for me to go to the school, Santa Cruz School for the Blind in Trinidad, as I'm walking out at 9 o'clock that morning to go catch the taxi, that's what we use in Trinidad, taxis instead of buses. Well, now they are buses. It was interesting that everybody in the house were crying. Everyone, all my aunts, my 13 brothers, 3 sisters, they were all crying because I was leaving them. At the time, 2 years I spent in that school, let me tell you, they all came one by one to visit me every week and to take me back and forth. I have had the most loving experience. And last thing about my mother, and I talk too much, I begin to cry because it's that impactful that honestly, she's the one who got me to this point of going to school and getting a PhD and building the Institute for the Development of African American Youth to serve now some 30,000 young people over the years that they've been. And my mother simply said,
Did you say 30,000? Say that number again for the audience. How many
30,000 young people and their families we have served in the last, going to be 30 years. In May 2021, it's going to be 30 years, 30,000 people. And it's doable, you know, but my mother said to me, you can do whatever you want to do. Don't let the world hold you back. And she said it to me at least as a mantra 12 times a day. Every time I struggle to do something, don't let anybody tell you can't do it. Let me show you how to do it, or let's think about how to do it. And this woman did Herculean work to help me with my blindness. Last but least, before I get to Ida and your other question, when I came to the United States, my mother was head and shoulder in everywhere. I went to graduate school in Indiana. She came and spent time helping me, reading to me, doing research. A woman who only finished 8th grade doing research. It was the most powerful thing. I could count on my mother. And when she was dying 10 years ago now, she said, I can go. Everything I wanted for you, you can do. I wanted you to be independent. I wanted you to be a father. I have one child, and I wanted you to love someone. And I said, Mother, you can go. I'm good. I'm good. Wow. And out of that is who I am today. And that's what our boys need. Our boys need steadfast people in their lives, unblinking. Yes, some take advantage of you. Some will abuse you. Some will steal from you. But you don't let those things get in the way of you being who you are. And this is who I am. And last point, when I was a doctoral student in political science at Temple, I was very concerned that I would have 40, 80 young people in my classroom, and only one was African American, 2 Latino, 10 Asians, and the rest were European Americans. I love everybody, but if you know Temple, it's in the middle of a ghetto, North Philadelphia, and to have a university cordoned off with security just for Temple students and European American students, and only 1 or 2 students in my classes, that's an absolute disgrace. And that's why I thought on Saturdays I would do a little class for IDA and to help the black kids around just come and I'll help them out. And out of that grew IDA. I left teaching at Temple so I can pursue this. It's not paying the kind of money a professor would pay, and it doesn't give you the fortune. But let me tell you, I am infinitely happier being doing this work at a low level. Thank you.
I told you this is going to be a powerhouse conversation today, people. Thank you so much, Director Leacock, Dr. Leacock. Thank you so much for that powerful and inspiring story. We heard about Principal Moody, who talked about his family and that love and steadfastness. And as you talked about your mom and love of family, right? Not giving up on each other and breaking the why not. Why not, right? Why not have a son and you can come and you can move yourself forward? So thank you so much. I'm honored to have another gentleman with us, Principal Marcellus Stovall. I'm sending him a big virtual hug. He is one of my dynamic principals. He is principal of New Design Middle School. It is in Harlem, and I know exactly where it's located. It's off of Riverside Drive. There's a big building on the corner of 135th Street and Broadway, and there's a school underneath. And the reason why I am so honored when God goes out of his way to surprise you, I get to say that I went to that building as a middle school learner. So I was in that building when it was called Roberta Clemente Middle School. And now I get the honor and the pleasure of having Principal Stovall here to talk about how he steps up, shoulders up, and stands in the gap for our young people. So Principal Stovall, if you can introduce yourself to the audience and tell us who's made the difference for you.
Wow. I mean, with that introduction, I don't think I need to introduce myself further. I mean, well, thank you very much, Dr. B. As Dr. B said, my name is Marcellus Stovall. I'm the principal of New Design Middle School. It's in District 5 in West Harlem. I've been the principal there going on 3 years. I've been in the district, for over 10 years. I like to call my school the best kept secret in Harlem. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I do know that when people sometimes pass by the building, they say, wow, I didn't know that, that school was there or your school was there, or they would call it Roberto Clemente. And I have to remind them that Roberto Clemente is no longer there, that New Design is there, right? And so with that being said, our school offers, a traditional school, social studies, science, math. But what we do best is we provide students with experiences, that they can take with them, to high school. And so with, advanced math and, science labs and different opportunities, around how to engage their community and different partnerships we have. So my dad wasn't around as often as he should, like, most Black and brown students, unfortunately. However, I was lucky to have a lot of men in different positions, that supported me in different ways, whether it was the men in church or the men on the block, or even, just cousins, distant cousins that would provide me with some advice here and there. What stands out to me the most is when I was in middle school, right? Ironically, I was in the Boy Scouts. And I remember it was a little bit before my dad had passed away, my scout leader, Mr. Williams. I remember him distinctly. I'm 45 years old, and I still remember him, like yesterday. And he would always be available, to all the young men, in the troop to provide them with advice or show up for us or come to our events or, give us advice or, to connect us, into different ways of life. So I remember him in all different ways. Like he used to always remind us to be helpful to our mom, to help our community, and to help each other, So I would say that's probably one of the first men in my life that I remember, that provided, some jewels, as so to speak, to support my growth and development as a young man in this world. One in particular, I remember a high school teacher, Mr. Feggins. He passed away just recently. He was a, real cool history teacher with swag that, everybody wanted to be, like. And I guess in some way, form, or fashion, I somehow patterned myself to be like him in that way. All the kids wanted to go to his class and eat lunch with him. And, he was a Muslim brother as well. He wore his kufi with his nice suits and, like he was just really cool, and he made education. Awesome. Yeah, he made education seem fly. And, and I'm like, wow, I want to be like him. But I didn't know that at first because that wasn't, yeah, right. And here I am. And I'm sure he, he would definitely be proud to know that, his influence, his words, even Mr. Williams, his words, his wisdom, his jewels that he provided, somehow blossom, in us, so yeah.
What is the through line that I hear everyone saying is about relationships, that it's about people taking the time to get to know you, to doing something different for you, to encourage you on a daily basis in this process. I usually answer the question, but I'm going to hold and I'll share mine after. I want to go to Principal Moody because I want to talk about the differences in mindsets as we think about raising our sons and investing in in fatherhood. What do you think is the difference in the mindset between being a son and being a father?
I've thought about that question, and the way I explained it to my son actually is, well, my father explained it to me as a son. You do what I tell you to do, and he's responsible for everything else. He won't tell me to do anything that will get me in trouble. And if he did, he'll take ownership and he'll be responsible for that. But what I tell my son is that the difference between a child and an adult is simple. A child is born, and their only goal in life is to become an adult, is to get older, to grow up. But the difference is that a child wants what they want when they want it. If a baby cries, they want to eat, they want to get changed. What makes a child different from an adult? Adult does things that they have to do, and a child does things that they want to do. So as an adult, you have to do things that sometimes you don't want to do, but you have to do to raise your family, to be an example for your family in your community. And these things are not easy. I mean, Dr. Leacock and Principal Stovall may make them look easy, but they're not easy to get up every day and have the responsibility of being a man at home and at work. You're the man at your job, and it's not easy. So for me, the difference here is the level of responsibility. But we have to train and teach our sons, our young men, how to take that responsibility and take ownership of it. And then once you have it, you have to teach. Once that a saying that says those who learn teach. So once you learn that, you have to now turn around and teach. Some of the problems that I see is that we don't reach back to folks who don't have it all together. And for me, that is the key piece in all of this, is to connect with individuals who did not have that upbringing, right? So you are a father not only to your natural born kids. My father fathered 200 kids in his own home, but not to mention the countless number of kids he fathered in his program. He ran a diversion program for individuals who were adjudicated, who were incarcerated. They were incarcerated 2 to 3 years. He ran a program where he went to the judge, and the judge took him out of jail and put him in his program. So he fathered many kids, and I saw that coming up. So to me, that was the key. That was the answer. So each one teach one. If you do that for 100 young men, and the next guy does it for 100 young men, there won't be a such thing as fatherless children. I do understand that there's nothing that can replace the natural father, but we have to step up, and there should not be any excuses to why the men in our community are in the condition we are in.
Thank you so much for that. And I think what I hear, which is so important as we have conversations, we always talk about what's not working in the community. So for those who are just joining us, this is our legacy webinar, and we are here to talk about solutions, to say that we do have power, that we do have control, and that we can step up. And that here is your dad who has done it, and he shouldered up, and you now stand on his shoulders and leading that work. I'm going to go to Principal Stovall, and then I'm going to go to Director Leacock. Principal Stovall, can you extend, if you want to, on the definition of fatherhood? But I also want to ask you, what do you see as the challenges and the barriers that must be moved if we are going to protect fatherhood in our community? So what is the barriers? What is it that we've got to move and get out of the way if we're going to now engender and protect fatherhood? Principal Stovall?
All right, that's a rich question. All right, so let me just go.
It's the Dr. B show. Hey, we bring it. We're not going for low-lying fruit right here.
Absolutely, I see. Well, I'm gonna address the first piece that you said, fatherhood. And so, fatherhood, I believe, is a band of men, right? Abandon men who decide, right, because it's a choice, who decide to care for, to love, to parent, to coach young people, right? They don't necessarily need to be yours, right? But they make a choice to say that I want to parent, coach, teach, love, nurture, these young people, right? And so I think that there's many of us there that are doing that work, and so I just want to give all fathers that are making that choice a shout out. So again, everyone that's a father out there, continue supporting our children. Barriers, wow, quite a few barriers. One in
About what?
particular
One that's
is,
really like
yeah.
you see, because you're in there every single day, Principal Stovall. You are always embracing your kids. You are there creating that safe space. So what's the barrier that is really touching you today and you want us to be more mindful of?
Barriers. I would say I would go with the legal system and the way that the system is set up. Around fathers that don't live in the house with their children. There's a lot of issues that single parents face, single mothers, single dads. In regards to custody. Who can come to see the child, school, teacher, etc. That causes a challenge, right? Because legally, if we have information that says that the father cannot see the child for whatever reason, that's a barrier and that's a problem, right? Because we know that it takes a whole village, right, to truly, raise a child, right? So that's one barrier. When you have two families, one dad lives on one side of the town, mom lives on this side, sharing of information. That's another barrier. Ensuring that we have the right addresses. That if they're in different households, that we're giving mom the same information we're giving dad. Lots of times that mom doesn't always share the information with dad. Again, that's a barrier.
That's a barrier.
Absolutely.
And that's what we need to hear, and we need to know those. As I think about, and Director Leacock, I'm going to go to you next because I want to hear about the work that you're doing in IDA and what the barriers you're facing. But as I think about this work for us, when we talk about ending the social reproduction of failure, I grew up in Harlem, and I grew up with one of my mentors. His name was Dr. John Henry Clark. And I loved James Baldwin. And James Baldwin, as people are looking today around this Black Lives Matter piece, he talked about the fact that around Black men getting access to work, right? It's not a new discussion. And the fact that, hey, you would allow women to go and work in homes in low-skilled domestic jobs, but you would create a system that criminalizes Black men. And so for me, yes, it is an economic barrier and the criminalization of our men, and which leads to the breakup of family, right? If you hear the stories of women, no romance without finance. So it all becomes very entrenched there, right? Because it's constantly kind of pulling us apart as a family. So for me, it's an economic one. We can't end the school to prison pipeline if we don't have economics and if we don't have high level careers and places for our children to explore and to grow. Director Leacock, I want to go to you. So you to say that you've had an impact of 30,000, right? I'm in this work for 13 years. So he's raising the bar, Principal Moody and Principal Stovall. He's like, Dr. B, you just getting started. And I'm excited about this run I'm on. So Director Leacock, if you could tell us a little bit more about what specifically IDA Institute for the Development of African Youth, what exactly do you do? And in terms of working with young men and working with community?
Well, first of all, I want to be clear about this because folks think I had this major design and I'm just implementing it. And this is really one of a mission creep. When I said to the first 10 or 11 young people, come in on Saturday to Ritter Hall at Temple, and I will help you with your math challenges and your English. I believe it. I'm blind. I can do it. I know 1 + 1 is 2, and don't tell me it's not. What we found, yeah, right. So what we found out back then is the biggest challenge is not only having very few African Americans and minority in my classroom, is having men. I mean, in the 8 years of teaching at Temple and another 3 years at University of the Arts, I have to tell you that probably 5 or 6 in all the years I've worked. This is a damn shame where we don't have young men or men, period, in college, because that is going to ultimately affect our fatherhood. That's going to affect our leadership in our community, and this is ultimately going to affect the level of internal development that we need to be balanced mentally, physically, and psychologically. So the society is really doing irreparable harm in not paying attention to African American men as we're talking here, boys and men. So it's important that we understand what fatherhood means and what we are doing at the agency. It was a mission that crept. I didn't think of doing this. And each time someone came to me with an idea, I said, let's give it a try. And it would explode. And I would call, say, in West Philadelphia, Southwest, we started our parenting program. And we said, we only need about 15 guys. And I had, almost 100 guys show up. He said, that blind man, he for real. He know what he's doing. Yeah, I mean, so we were able, anytime I call an audience, it is overcrowded. In fact, the second year of I-Day, when we said, everybody, you guys go out and get folks to come. We're going to start back on Saturday because, college students, we take summer off. We're not working in the summer. So in September, when we came back, I'm only expecting each person to bring one. There were 200 people in my hall, in the hallways. I went to the bathroom and I almost had diarrhea. I could not believe it. It's like, God damn, what am I going to do now? I only asked for 10 plus 10, and I ended up with 200. It was crazy. And also, I mean, this is how it can be done, because I never had a father. My father left when I was 2 years old, but I had 13 brothers, and each one of them was my father. I come down the steps, my one brother would say, great job, like what you did. The other one would punch me and say, you didn't go buy my cigarettes when I needed. And one at the bottom says, so where you think you're going, bro? So I had 3 different dictators in my life telling me what to do, and therefore I had to seek the best of them. I implicitly, without even thinking of it, brought those values to the Institute and said, yes, I am from the Caribbean, but there are some things that we bring that are intrinsically men and intrinsically how we need to support, our young boys develop. And after many years of study, with all of the things going on with the 419 years of racism and slavery and all that stuff, I have really come to the realization, and I know it is something we are fighting now with Black Lives Movement, because since we started in May 1991, we have been doing Black Lives Matter, because the name of the agency is intentional, and it says what it is we are doing. Institute for the Development of African American Youth. We are intentionally saying that. Therefore, our work revolves around African Americans. 70% of the young people right now are African Americans. Another 20% Latinos, because in America, with Title VII, you got to serve everybody. You can't serve one group only without 20 years of research saying the one group is good, and that's not my intention. I love everybody. I taught in white schools. I taught in black schools. But at the end of the day, our black children and I'm not saying it in a negative way, underperform. But when they're giving the challenges and they're given the supports from fathers, from men, they far exceed. And I have evidence to show you that these guys do live and they're here. We have young people who have graduated from I-Day, gone all over the world to work and study and to do, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And these guys are back here doing phenomenal work. And it can be done. It has been done. And we have to ultimately, this is my last phrase because I'm so passionate about this.
So that's why everybody's on this call. If you listen, you came to the right webinar. This is our community conversations with leaders. It is always a dynamic talk, and the passion of the panel members we have today. We have Principal Moody from Tambua Moody Academy in Paterson. We've got Principal Stovall from New Design in Harlem. We have Director Archie Leacock for the Institute of African for the Development of African American Youth in Philadelphia. You came to the right place. Let your friends know know, please make sure you like and subscribe because of that YouTube algorithm. We've got to be able to push this conversation out. And you're absolutely right, Director Leacock. We are all passionate about it. So I want to make sure people know where to find you. They can search you. It's idaay.org. I want to keep pushing a little bit time-wise, though. So I want to talk a little bit about, yes, we are hearing that I know that we each are working with different staff members. And probably before I ask that question, I want to honor what you just said, Director Leacock, about our boys having access to role models of color, right? Men in their classroom. And that's why I say it's an economic agenda. So the social reproduction of failure is that if I never see a Black man in a position, right, of authority and as a role model, then all they do, the kids have figured out the truth. They know the plan you have for them is prison. So they're gonna wear their hat backwards, they're gonna pull their pants down, and they're gonna tell you, this is the best years of my life, whether you like it or not. And so they know that the plan is the pipeline to prison. So we have to begin to have an economic agenda. And I do get pushback when people talk about teachers of color in the classroom. I work directly with teachers. Just because you're a Black male doesn't mean that you're a great teacher, but we have mechanisms to help people improve their pedagogy and to give them a space to learn. And we don't want anybody hurting kids of any race. We want people in the classroom who want to be there, who love this work. So Principal Moody, I want to call on you a little bit. Tell us about how do you go about developing your team? How is it that you go about creating a space of people being willing to do this work with you?
That's a great question, and I'm of the belief. A lot of people say it starts at the top. I'm on the belief that sometimes the groundswell needs to start from the bottom up. And I empower my people from the bottom up. I don't believe they're at the bottom. We work for our students, and some of the positions in the school, like the paraprofessionals or the custodians or the security guards. For me and my system, these people who are connected to the community and from the community have leadership roles in the school. So I don't necessarily say they are above teachers or teachers are above them, but they are extremely powerful in the school. When our kids come to school, they relate to them. They represent me and my message. But the way we do it, honestly, is like anything else. Human beings want to feel a part of something. So if the majority of the people have that same philosophy that we're going to teach and reach our students at all costs, those teachers who are not doing that, or those staff members who are not doing that, become the outcasts. We run a program called we run our behavior modification program. Is called the Positive Peer Culture Program, where the power, we believe that the power of the peer is much greater than the power of the adult, meaning that students listen to students more so than they listen to staff. So we guide, motivate, and direct the culture. Where most adults get in the way is thinking that they control the students. We don't control the students. We work for the students. So when we empower them in that way, naturally, it's not just giving them the reins to do whatever they want, but we empower them to take ownership of their education, to want what's best for them. But we kind of guide them in the direction that we feel they need to go. But we make them believe that they are coming up with it, and in fact, they are coming up with ways to make themselves better. And we support that. And for teachers who do not buy into that, they get confronted by not only staff, students, parents. They become the outliers. So we develop that culture, and it's through constant communication and meeting, which does not really, schools don't really offer that type of time, but we're an alternative school. So we create that. We have a period each day where we work on this, and all staff members are involved with the students. And I meet with my staff once a week for about an hour. We create the time to do that so that we can guide the thought processes of how they should be thinking about empowering young people instead of taking control and trying to overpower them.
Thank you so much. I heard hashtag reach and teach. and making the space for your staff, and that it's not a hierarchical approach, that it's creating to be able to have everyone of people who you think is at the bottom, but in reality, they are the ones with the relationships. And I'm going to come back to that peer piece a minute after Principal Stovall. If you can share a little bit, tell us about how do you get to that space of willingness to work towards solutions, not only if you want to go with your staff, but also I know you do a lot around parents and parent engagement.
Yes, so I like Principal Brother Moody. We do a lot of opportunities where we provide entry points for students to communicate their needs. We too want to develop students and have them have voice, and so we provide and have certain mechanisms that allow them to have voice, whether it's through town hall meetings, whether it's through student government, whether it's through student ambassador. We provide opportunities to hear, what students have to say and somehow get them in the mindset of recreating what they're asking for, what they're thinking in a way that, that they can get what they want. Right. So if that's a new program, or if that's a trip, or if that's something, new to the school that they want, like we're teaching them how to advocate, and have some advocacy around those particular things. I too, like Principal Brother Moody, stated, believe in distributed leadership as well. Everyone has a leadership position in my school. More than one person wears, all the way up to the principal, including me, so if that's running a program, if that's, formulating a trip, if that's having conversations with students, everyone engages students and staff and parents, together, we're a community of one. We also have a lot of different opportunities for parents to engage, especially fathers. Again, I didn't come up with this idea. I was reading an article last year, and it was something, I forgot what city was doing this, and they wanted more fathers to engage the school environment, and I decided on one day a week that would be for fathers, for Fridays. And I'm like, wow, that's a good idea. When they came into the school, and so they could volunteer, they can meet with the teacher, they can have coffee with the principal. You can decide on whether or not that's an all-day event. I decided to do it just for 2 hours, every other Friday, because we had other initiatives happening. And we did have some fathers come, and they really appreciated that opportunity to engage, their child's school, other than coming up for discipline issues, right? Which, I hate. I hate, the fact that parents come up for cell phones and for, versus having an academic conversation. That really annoys me, and it also, speaks and, tells a story around what parents, believe is important. So, my plan, was to change the narrative around that, that we don't only want you to come up for cell phones or discipline conversations. We want you to come and help. How can you support our school, your school, that's gonna, of course, help support your child. And so if that's a volunteer, if that's making phone calls, if that's, coming to speak to your principal and giving him some ideas on how to make the school better, whatever it is, that's your opportunity to come and engage the environment. We also do the same thing for mothers. And I extended that, due to that article I read, and it was Mother Mondays. And so moms are coming on Mondays and fathers are coming on Fridays, and it's good. We're going to continue with it. We definitely have to communicate more. There were a couple of parents that, for some reason they didn't understand, what we were trying to do. So we figured out another way to market, these opportunities for parents to come in. But overall, these barriers, we have to ensure that parents know that they have access to schools, and we also have to teach them how to navigate, because I do get parents, come into the building and they ready to kick in the door, waving the 4-4 like Biggie Small says.
Well, they may not have experiences. Right?
And so I, and believe it or not, me being a father, I'm
your connection is awesome.
I still believe I'm a young father. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, your connection is a little bit in and out, so
Okay.
I'm going to let you steady
Okay.
a moment. Excellent. So I heard Principal Stovall, you just gave some very concrete solutions and strategies for any of my principals, teachers out there, parents too. Talk to your school and say, this is something we want to try. So he suggested, not doing it one day a week, but he does Father Fridays and Mom Mondays to be able to build relationship with your students. And know that sometimes people have had negative experiences with schools. So I'm so happy you tried it, you took the feedback, and you're going to keep going. Director Leacock, I'm coming to you with a policy question. For those who are in the audience, send us your questions. We can take your questions in the comment bar. I've got a member of the team who will text it to me, and I can see it as well. So we want to hear your questions. If you didn't get a chance to show Dr. B the love, what are you going to do? You're going to like and you're going to subscribe, because like I said to you, it's the YouTube algorithm. And to be part of that community, we have to, we appreciate you taking that time. I want to talk about policy, but I want to go back a minute to Principal Moody. You talked about this idea of peers, and it's something that we haven't even touched within our schools. In our company, we do a legacy lab day model, and we built it around peers and leadership and developing student leadership, because you're absolutely right. So those educators who are listening to the call, go back and read Vygotsky. I'll put it in theory for you. So Vygotsky says you have to create a zone of proximal development. And in that zone, your peers are knowledgeable others. So if you're not designing things around peers, and if you're not studying those relationships around who has that pull, you're not going to win. So for us, we build an entire model in math and in STEM around teaching kids how to be leaders, developing their voice, and empowering them so that they can lead a math class in 9th grade and 10th grade and 11th grade. You want your math scores to change? It's not about the scores, it's about the culture of learning. It's that culture. And if there's no culture of learning, if I don't value my peers, I'm hopeful that as we look to the future in this, we know it's a pandemic, but Dr. B also wants to say, I was with grandparents around the world this year, yesterday for a tea party on Sunday, and we were talking about a plandemic. And to be able to shift our thinking. So you will not move forward if we don't study peers. So we want people to invest in learning and dissertations and research, not about what's not working. We want to talk about what is working, which is peers. So Director Leacock, are you still with me? I want to ask you about policy, because you've been in this work now. You've worked at the university level. We talked about the policy about giving access to teachers of color. I hear about the principals and making the space. As our audience, once again, send us a question, send us your questions in the chat. So Director Leacock, if you're still, I think you're still on the line, tell me about policy. What's the policy shifts that you want to see? Because we're talking about in this context of Black Lives Matter, but for Dr. B, that's not an agenda. So based on your work in Philadelphia, in the community, and with over 30,000 young people and families you've impacted, what's the policy you'd like to see that you think would make a bigger difference and a shift and a more transformative shift?
Well, this is a difficult question, or difficult question to give you the right answer. Are
you saying Dr. B is asking the hard questions again? That's right, people. That is right. We don't do low-lying fruit at Legacy. So to my team that's out there, Director Leacock, that's right. It's a hard one. So bring it for the audience. Tell them, what's the one thing you feel?
I certainly think in my studies, hold on a quick second here. I'll be right out. Give me about 10 minutes. Okay. Sorry. My next meeting is banging on my door. I just asked them to give me 10 more minutes. But anyway, so I really think there is such a decentralized but very focused approach to annihilating Black men, because when we first came to this country, there were white masters. White masters didn't want to have any competition. So there are Black men learning to do, and anything we did well back then on plantation threatened the big White House. Therefore, women weren't as necessary to debunk or to annihilate. So, and if you look through the hundreds of years, it is Black men. We're the ones being lynched. We're the ones being killed with the voter registration when you go down to the West. We're the ones being George Floyd. It is black men to a large extent. Yes, we have had some women in Texas and so on, being killed, sitting in a car and that kind of stuff. But it is essentially a strategy to annihilate black men. And until we understand implicitly, all of us understand that we are going to get nowhere by asking white people and asking the majority to give us sympathy and have social justice as for you, that's ridiculous in my opinion, because they're not about to do it. The history is clear. We are to be annihilated. Therefore, we need to fundamentally change the policies. And 2 years, twice I ran thinking magically that I would win. I could rewrite legislation, get it passed, and affect our young people. Well, of course, my own brothers and sisters fought against me because we think getting into the council and getting into the legislature is all we need to do. And then we make friends and we compromise across the line. Therefore, we get not what we want, but we get something individually rather than knowing we have to change the very environment that our young people build homes, get policies right, and not deal with this racism that continues. It is so implicit. It is woven into every policy. We have a struggle, and a real struggle as black people to overcome. Can we do it? Yes, we can. But we need 20 of us, not one Malcolm X, not one, person talking like this, Martin Luther King, but we need all to come together. We have values, value to make this happen, and it can happen. I am very optimistic that since I came here as a child, blind, and I was afraid to persevere with my mother saying, you can, you can, you can. Don't let the world tell you you can. Today, I'm a leader. My young people look to me for wisdom, for thoughts, for comfort. Every month, I have 2 or 3 young people being buried, being shot. Guess what? This ain't no emergency for this country. We had our President Nixon, say a couple of decades ago, once they keep shooting in the neighborhood, I'm cool. What do you think the current president is saying? I'm going to be a law and order. I'm going to put you down. I'm not endorsing violence in any way, but I'm clearly seeing it's a byproduct of what happens. Can we manage it? Yes. The same way we manage talking to our boys to be men and to be fathers, the same way we say violence is not the way to go. We need to be clear about this. And I don't yet see my brothers stepping up to the plate to consistently supporting that kind of agenda and those kinds of policies.
Well said. Well said. I see you, Principal Moody. Go ahead. Jump in there.
I don't want to take anything away from what he said. I'm in agreement with him, and it just made me think about the quote by Frederick Douglass: "Power concedes nothing without demand." And we're out here asking for things. I mean, when we're in these positions, like a principal of a school, in order to rise to that level, we have to be acculturated to some degree. For him at the university level, you have to be acculturated to some degree. But we cannot forget what our true mission and our job is, and it's to empower young people to develop 100 Malcolm X's and Frederick Douglass's and true warriors who fight for the cause. But we need economic development. We need to be economically stable to be able to say what we want, do what we want, and take care of our own. So that's a 2-part, it's an 8-part answer to that question, but he did a great job, Dr. Leacock.
And honestly, we all need to be here working on this thing together. I don't think I have the final answer. I'm willing to learn. That's why I go to a lot of these town hall meetings. I listen, because in listening is where you learn. But talking means you have made a decision. You have a position.
You said something, though. I see Principal Stovall wanted to jump in. I'm mindful of the time. I'm going to let Principal Stovall jump in, and I'm going to say to you that I think you said the answer, and I'm going to ground it in history in a moment. Go ahead, Principal Stovall. You want to jump in there?
Yeah, I'm going to take it a step further, from Leacock and Brother Moody, right? And so, yes, we want to empower, right? But we also need to create our own. And I'm not saying we need to go back to segregation, but I'm going to take it back to a quote since we're using quotes, right? And one quote says, "A child not embraced by the community will burn it down," right? And so what I'm saying is that we're not being embraced. We have to create our own. So we're empowering the next Malcolm X, the next Martin Luther King. We need to create our own. So for us to be in these positions of power, you know, I mean, I know it's not highest level of power, but you know, the level of minds that we get a chance to mold and embrace, and the type of partnerships we have to do that, because you know what? Then it's going to be another 100 years that we're still trying to fight for civil rights. Another 100 years that we're still trying to fight for equal rights. I mean, 400 years and we're still doing that?
Exactly.
What has changed? And so what needs to change is we need to do what Rick Ross says and buy back the block. Drop the mic on that.
Yes. Oh, Principal Snowball, drop the mic. All right. I hear the answer and I fully agree. And as we engage in this work, you just said something really powerful. You said we have to produce leaders. Let us be honest about the fact that our school systems in this country was not designed or ever intentionally designed to make us leaders. And so if we are really resting on the mindset that our school systems are going to produce them. And yes, I work with schools every day to have that fight, and I'm in that fight with my team. But we have to be honest about the development of leaders. And for me, as a company, it is also about stewards, that we have to know what we're stewarding in the now will take us to the future. And we are not ready to have that conversation. I don't want to do the sound bites. I understand and I believe in, and I love our young people with Black Lives Matter, but we need the wisdom now to say, wait a minute, if you're painting the street with the paint, Dr. B want to know, where did you buy the paint? Who delivered the paint? Where did you get the paint? And I say that, go and look at the Golden Gate Bridge. The contract for painting the Golden Gate Bridge has gone to the same company for the past 100+ years. You want to change your outcomes in California for your Black and Hispanic children, let that contract go to somebody else. We need leaders who are going to be courageous enough to have an economic agenda for our young people, and we need real leadership. And until we invest in that and come together as leaders, that's why this car talk is conversations with community leaders. We were very intentional about saying that we have to come together to have the discussion. So Dr. Leacock, you hit it right. It's passionate, yes, but it is also about leadership, and it is empowering our children to lead. I'm mindful of the time. I want to kind of close down with a final question.
Dr. B, you need to do this again. I've barely begun talking. You need to do this again, because this is excellent.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we are absolutely on the move. And I so appreciate that. You know, when you step out on faith and you are in this space, you know, what keeps me going is the love of my team, the love of my schools, my teachers, my principals, and community. I am from a place, a small island. I was born in Grenada, but I grew up in Harlem. And I know fully well, you know, what it is to walk. I walked the streets of Harlem with my dad, with my mom. And so I know fully well what we're fighting for. I was there in the 80s in the crack age when you couldn't even feel safe. But it is all about community for me. So I thank you so much for honoring me and honoring our team with that. I want to end, I want to kind of give you a chance to close. For those who are just, you know, if you just joined us, you get a chance to listen and stay with us. Don't forget to show us the love. What are you doing? You're hitting the like button, you're hitting the subscribe button, because you got to work with Dr. B and the algorithm for YouTube, okay? Also, we're going to use the hashtag reach and teach for us when we, you know, tweet this out. I want to end with a question. I know we talked briefly about stewardship, and yes, I know we think we need to come back and do this again, maybe a town hall. I'm open to figuring out what that is when we, you know, continue this dialogue. I want to ask you to finish the sentence for me. And for those who are listening, Dr. B always charges the audience as well. So you better send us, I want you to send us either a tweet or Instagram. And my question is, how do you show up? How do you step up? How do you stand in the gap for young people? So my closing question in the last 5 minutes or last 2 minutes is, if you can, each of my panel members finish this statement as we close off talking about our boys, our young men, and fatherhood. This I believe. This I believe. I'm going to go to Director Leacock. I'll ask you to be timely with it. This I believe.
This, I believe, can be done. We need infinitely more work. It is heading in the right direction. And I have to tell you, as tragic as George Floyd is. I think it's the precipitus, the beginning of showing white people how difficult this is, and it's them too. A man died, and we have to continue to enjoy that moment, but build and capitalize on it. Yes, we have to ask others for support, but asking is only, in my opinion, 15, 20%. The rest of it is us doing, and we have to infinitely do more. On the subway in Philadelphia, people are afraid to talk to other black kids when they're running up and down the aisle. I don't care. I tell them, listen, sit down. It's public. You have to finish. You got to get them to sit down. That's involvement. It begins there, not at the PhD level where you can think about all kinds of charts and figures and logic models. It's at the street level, talking to a brother and say, you can do this. Call me. I have an idea. I have an opportunity for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Director Leacock. You can find him for the Institute for the Development of African American Youth. You can find him online, idaay.org. I'm going to go to Principal Stovall. This I believe.
This I believe that we will transcend to a life of excellence and equity and equality.
Oh, thank you so much, Principal Stovall of New Design Middle School in Harlem. He's got a YouTube channel. I did put it in the flyer. I'll make sure we also include it in the comment in the box section in our YouTube when we post the description. Thank you, Principal Stovall. Principal Moody, this I believe.
This I believe. African Americans and people of the African diaspora are the most resilient people on the planet. There are no other people who could have withstood the trauma that we've been through and still be standing to talk about it. So yes, we're in a bad shape, very bad shape, but there is hope, right? And our young people are the answer. We have to mold them to we as a generation hopefully we have stood on the shoulders of our elders and folks who endured torturous times to be where we are today. But we got to know that our offspring, our children, our grandchildren will see the day in which they take their rightful place in the world as the leaders of the world. Currently, we anything of significance can be attributed to African civilizations 3,000 years before BC. That's our history. That's who we are, and we still have remnants of that after what we have endured and what we are still enduring. So I'm hopeful and knowing that this may not happen in my lifetime. It may not happen overnight. And we say 400 years and 100 years ago we were fighting for these same civil rights, but I do believe that we are the keys to civilization lies within us, and we have the power to overcome all of these atrocities that have been performed against us.
Thank you so much to my panel members. Dr. B is going to end and close. This I believe in love, and I think you have to love even when people hurt you. And it is love that is going to take us to the next wave and to the future. And we have to love ourselves. We have to help others learn how to love. So even though we've been talking about fatherhood in the context of our community of boys and young men, we're going to have to take this discussion and define it as a nation and as a world, because I want to give a special recognition to the family of Jacob Blake. That's not fatherhood when you shoot another man's child down so easily. That is not being a father. That is not being a man. That is not being a good son. So we have to help others as well with love to help others come to that understanding. So this is not only about communities of color. This is far more broad and expansive. I want to say thank you to my dynamic panel. I told you will be having a powerful powerhouse conversation here on our community conversations on our legacy webinar. Yes, Director Leacock, we're going to do it again. And we will definitely connect again, and we will figure out some next steps. We're actually in the process of planning a town hall regarding opening schools, and we've been asked to also do a conversation around corrections. And Principal Moody, you've kind of laid that foundational work, so we look forward to that being one of our next upcoming webinars as well. Thank you for showing us the love, liking, and subscribe. And we're wishing you and ask you to please continue to stay safe. And it is a pandemic, but we can also see this as a pandemic.
Thank you very much. And to the panelists, I'm really excited to learn from you guys and to be a part of this. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you.
I as well. Thank you all. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, we're going to